Yay, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Meet Cute Monday. I am here with Becky. Would you like to introduce yourself and your latest book?
Yes, I am so happy to be here. I am Becky Albertalli, and the book that I'm here talking about today is Kate in Waiting, which comes out uh, pretty soon. I feel like it's like a little bit over 2 weeks. Getting close.
I specifically wore pink today just because I was both of our books are doing the pink thing. So I was let me make sure that I'm all ready. For anybody who doesn't know, I am Emery Lee, author of Meet Cute Diary, about a trans boy, his blog, and the fake relationship that he stages to save the blog from an internet troll.
Can I just interject some stuff about Meet Cute Diary, which I was lucky enough to read this book early, and this wasn't a surprise. I kind of could tell. You can sometimes just tell, oh yeah, this book was written for me. I knew I was going to love it. I didn't know how much love I had in me. Because, yeah, and I think one of the things that's so special about this book for me, and I think I tried to capture this sentiment in my blurb, but I never feel like I'm doing this justice. But Meet Cute Diary is it hits that sweet spot of subverting the tropes while celebrating the tropes. So it is as immersive of a rom-com as any rom-com, but it is it almost feels like kind of there is this meta commentary going on at the same time that doesn't detract from the romanticness. I love it. There's so many layers happening in this book. I'm so excited for this book to come out. I'm so excited for all of y'all to read it and recommend it to everybody. It's definitely worth pre-ordering.
Thank you so much for saying that. You were actually one of the first people who actually read the book, because it was literally my betas, my publishing team, and then you. And so it was I'm so excited. And of course, I think everybody already knows, Becky's books are brilliant. I love all of them. I mean, I'm reading Kate right now, so I'm not done with it yet, but just I just there's the relationship with Kate and Andy, and I'm just oh god, they're so cute. I love them, and just yeah. So to hear you say that, it's so nice. I'm yay! It's always fun. I feel when you talk to an author and you're both just back and forth, oh, I love your work, but I love your
work. All events should be like that. I hope that's fun for the audience as well, because I love it. So.
Sorry, y'all. Don't worry. We'll move on to actual stuff. So two things I want to say. One is feel free to ask any questions that you have for us as we go, and we'll get to them as we can. And the other thing is, if you look in the description of the video right now, there is a link for a Meet Cute Diary art giveaway. I'm currently hosting one across my social media. So there's one on Twitter, one on YouTube, and one on Instagram. So if you follow me on all of my socials, and subscribe to my channel. For each one, there's a separate entry. So you'll be entered for 3 different signed arcs that I'm giving away. So, yay. Okay, on to the questions that I have prepared for you. Okay, super fun. So I love Kate because she's so ridiculously dramatic and super I love writing characters who are super dramatic and angsty. And I feel Kate just totally is that person. And she mentions that there's a profound intimacy to working on a play with someone. So what I want to know is, how do you leverage your character's hobbies, passions, and pastimes in order to frame these romantic stories that you put together?
The most flattering question. What I love about this question is the presumption that everything is a deliberate craft choice, and that I'm a master of craft or something. I'm just why yes, all of that was on purpose. I carefully chose my character's interests to like, yeah, oh my gosh, one day I'm gonna like figure out how to crack the code and do that. But yeah, it's like so much of that, and I would say so much of my process in general kind of comes together organically. It's like a little bit chaotic. Um, it's like I am starting with this character. I come to understand her interests and the things that she is passionate about and obsessed with, and kind of sometimes by kind of following the character down that rabbit hole, that's where I end up finding the story. So even if I have just like a basic premise in my head already about what the story is generally about, like a lot of the heart of it comes from just kind of following my characters where they take me. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm really similar with my writing too, where like a lot of the times it's literally like I have a plot, like a inkling, like a plot idea, and then like a character, and then everything else just kind of like plays out like as I go. Like, do you plot or do you pants?
I'm like in between.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say like I try to plot and then like to varying degrees of success. I tend to like I've never been able to do like a really like structured traditional outline, but I tend to like kind of have a summary of what's happening in a particular chapter, and then I kind of expand that and kind of dig in a little bit with like dialogue, and then I turn that into each chapter. That's what I've been doing lately. What about you? I'm so curious because I feel like we have a lot in common. Yeah.
I'm a chaotic pantser, like a chaotic, like so like all and I learned this from like Twitter pitch contests, but like I'll usually come up with like a short like 2-sentence pitch for a book, and that's all I have. And then I just start writing, and it's kind of like whatever happens and like sometimes like as I'm going I'll sometimes I'll like almost like outline a chapter like before I write that chapter, or like kind of like, oh, like make sure to do this, or like, oh, at the midpoint we're gonna throw in this. I have no idea what happens in between, but at the midpoint throw in something about blank and like that kind of stuff. But yeah, for the most part it's just absolute chaos, and it's like if I even know like do I even know the character's like last name until it comes up, until like the end. Like I think a great example actually is Devin. Like there's a part where Noah was like, I didn't even know Devin's last name until like this happened, and that was literally when I learned Devin's last name because I didn't give him one before.
This does not surprise me at all. It's narrating my brain.
Yeah, it's just like I had to do like a partial outline for like a book, and it was like it was like so hard because I just feel like I like the idea of like planning out what to do and actually following it, and therefore like having a structured story that you don't have to like rewrite every time you like edit it. But then like when I go to write it, like if they'll be like, like the outline will be like, you're gonna do this, and I'm like, I don't know, man, I don't think I do that anymore. Like that sounded good yesterday, but not today.
Yeah, it's yeah, for me LA, yeah, I really do tend to do most of my fleshing out like right before I'm going to be writing that chapter. Yeah, because I sort of need like just the emotional weight of everything that I've like written so far. And then of course, like I mean, this obviously doesn't apply to any writers who who write like non-linearly. Like I write linearly. Like I don't think I've ever tried doing anything else. I like cannot imagine. I cannot imagine that level of chaos. So.
Like I feel like that's what like me too. Like I write linearly, and like I don't remember who I was talking to. I was telling somebody, and they were like, oh, like what do you like? What's happening in the next chapter? And I'm like, I don't know until I've written the previous chapters. Like I have to, like I will plant like Easter eggs as I write. Like it'll be like, oh, like someone put on like gray lipstick, and like I have no plans for that but then later on I'll be like, I mentioned some weird lipstick earlier. I should make it so like the lipstick was poisoned or something. And then that changes like the whole course of the plot. So like I literally have to write it in order because every time it's just like, oh, if I add this random detail, maybe I can turn it into something cool. And then that's just like literally how the plot even like develops in the first place. Otherwise, I always end up like if I try to like plan out an idea and just like write that idea, it's always lacking. Like it's always very short and there's not a lot of like subplots or like, like foreshadowing or like interesting stuff. So I'm like, no, I'll just let my brain go chaotically across the page and whatever happens, that's what we get. Like,
yeah. And then kind of the revision period, I think for me, like it's helpful, I think, to kind of let yourself almost like free associate a little bit, whether it's in the draft or in the kind of pre-writing stuff. But I would like, I do much better if I'm able to like kind of pick and choose from stuff that's already there rather than try to, I guess, inhibit that the freewheeling kind of brain stuff that's happening. So yeah, but it's hard to, none of this for me is like intentional. Like I'm never sitting down being like, yes, this is the process that works for me. It's just kind of like, that seems to be what happens when I open my document.
Yeah, I feel like it's like I rarely like actually think about it beforehand. It's always like looking back afterwards and I'm like, oh, right. Because like sometimes I'll sit down and be like, okay, I'm gonna plan out the world building, and then all of a sudden I'm like, no, I'm just gonna write it. Or like I'm gonna like I always have like I would feel like I'll sit down and be like, work on this, and then whatever comes out is just that's it. Like, and I love what you said about like trying to like inhibit like the brain. Like it's just I feel like I feel like for some people it's like when your brain just runs on its own and it can go so many places like on its own without even thinking about it. Like I feel like when we try to like when we try to like hit the brakes, like it ruins everything. Like I feel like it just messes us up. Like I feel like it's easier to just whatever comes out and then we'll sculpt it later. Like we're not crafting from we're one of those people who just have to like cleave off like whatever doesn't work and we'll worry about it after.
Yeah, although I'm very greedy. Like I'm like so lazy. I hate writing things I like ultimately cut. So when I say I cut something, that means I like cut and paste it into like my my murdered darlings document, and then I will mine that thing if there are two words any part of the sentence that I can like pull from that and not have to like write it separately. I will take from that. It is like I leave nothing behind that I so.
I'm like I have like this whole like deleted scenes file and it's just like whatever I cut and like whenever I'm like, okay, I need a new scene here. What I got? Like let's just see what I got because like yeah, as opposed to like trying to come up with something new, it's like I feel like too like when I draft, I feel like it's like everything I can think of kind of like spills out at once. And so I feel like when it comes to like revising, it's always hard to like have to craft a new scene like from scratch. So I'm always like this book is already here. Like I don't know how to create something like completely like out of nowhere that like fill in the gaps. So I feel like it's always nice to have something I can just kind of go back and like pull from. It just makes it like clear.
No, very much so. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next question. So the dynamic between Kate and Andy, I love them. Like I love them. Like they're so freaking cute. Like I love them. And like of course, like I feel like that's something you're really good at. Like in a lot of your books, you just have like these friendships that are like so sweet and like you can't like it's like yeah you're shipping like the romance but like you're shipping the friendship, like you know what I mean, like you're here for this. So like I basically want to get your opinion on what role you think friendship plays in writing a convincing romance story, and if you have any recommendations for romance books that have really strong platonic relationships.
Yeah, I mean I love this. And like when I was Kate's age, like when I was an actual YA, I got no action at all. So like none. So it's very much it's friendship like was the whole story for me in real life. So that's something that's always going to be really important to me in my books. I really do love like writing. Sorry, I'm like adjusting my computer here. I love writing the like romantic love story, and then it's just like the the friendship stuff just kind of like, a lot of times, Kate and Waiting being an exception, but a lot of times I don't even necessarily go into it thinking about it as a friendship story, and then like it comes out the other side more of one than I thought it would be. Um, but yeah, I actually like I loved thinking about that question. I think there are a lot of authors who are I think like doing amazing things with that, like, particularly like a story that is like both romantic and kind of has like really memorable platonic friendships. I thought of a couple. Like I think Julie Murphy is always like she's like the queen of that. She's like like so like Dumpling and Pudding came to mind. Um, Julian Winters
Oh my
is
God, yes.
incredible at that. Like, yeah, Julian Winters is like, yeah, like king of the like ensemble cast, like, and just
Yeah.
these, yeah, these friend groups. One that I read recently that I thought was fantastic about this was Elise Bryant's Happily Ever Afters. Um, like absolutely wonderful and like definitely a rom-com too, but it's just like the friend stuff like really stood out to me as well. Um, I told myself, all right, so I'm going to try to limit kind of that annoying like author thing of like naming books that aren't out yet. I'm not gonna not do it, but I'm gonna try to like be mindful of like not doing that too much. So I'm just gonna name like there's like one book that's not out yet that I think does a phenomenal job at this too. Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June is yeah, that's like an amazing like friend group stuff, and also a lot of really cool like complex stuff happening with like a best friend who who lives like far away, like a long distance best friendship. So like yeah. um and I hope it goes without saying, but I mean, y'all are all here, Meet Cute Diary is like, well, I mean, in terms of in terms of the like chaotic ensemble, like I bow down, so like,
Thank you. I'm also gonna shout out while we're here, Johnny Garzavia. You can see them going wild in the comments. Um,
I have your book. I can't wait to read it.
oh my God, Becky, it's so good. Like
Everybody has said that. I have heard that from everybody. Yeah.
like when I picked up that book, I was like, oh my God, like I went into it like, oh, this is gonna be sweet, and then I was like I just kept going back and forth between like I'm gonna die and this is so sweet, and like I'm gonna die, and, like just absolutely adorable. Like if you're, I feel like I highly recommend that book as a great ensemble cast. That one's out in June. I don't remember the date. I'm so sorry, Johnny.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Yeah.
So good.
Oh my gosh, I need to be better about. Oh, hi everybody in the comments.
You're like, if you see my eyes darting, it's because like every so often there'll be like a new comment. I'm like, what's going on?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Hi everybody.
Yeah, everyone's being super sweet, and I'm like trying. I'm like trying to like pay attention to them while also like listening to you. So I'm just kind of like, what's happening?
Yeah, I'm like a nightmare. Like on an Instagram live too, it's a disaster. It's like I will sometimes like catch a comment or something out of nowhere and just will immediately start responding to it like verbally mid-sentence or something. It's like,
I feel like Instagram live comments too. Like I feel like the way that they like pop up, like it's like, oh my God. Oh my God. It's like,
like intrusive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. Sorry. Look, we're both easily distracted, so like this is always gonna be a disaster. But like, okay. So next question. You write a lot of books that take place in Georgia. So what are some of the best and hardest parts of writing about your own home state? And if you were to write a book based somewhere you've never written about before, where would it be?
Okay, well, I would say the best part about writing about my home state is when you write a book that's like heavily based on a candidate in a small local election in your district, and that ends up becoming like national news, and he runs for US senator and wins, and now he's your senator. Like, that's the best part.
Power.
I have the fact that like I have these two incredible senators. I feel like I'm sure that I'm like misremembering and exaggerating, but like I feel like Lucy McBath in 2018 was like the first time I've ever like voted for somebody who won. Like Georgia is changing very rapidly. I find that exciting too, in general, to write about. Like, I just, so I love that, writing about Georgia. But like the real reason that my books tend to be set in Georgia is because I almost feel like I need a really firm anchor for settings. Like, that's not something that comes naturally to me. Like, like I'm really not good at fleshing out like a unique setting in my head. So when I'm writing about settings, like, and I will like make stuff up, but I tend to do better if I'm like working off of something that exists. Like, I don't know if it just like brings my anxiety down or something. But like, I like to know, I'm like constantly Googling like how long it takes to drive from like one place that one character's house is based on to another. Like, anybody cares. Like, these houses are like, firmly set as their houses. Like, but that stuff is like, for whatever reason, important to me when I'm drafting. And so, being able to set things in familiar places, like, and what if it's us being set in Manhattan? What if it's like Arthur is living literally in my aunt's apartment, where I babysat her cat for 3 weeks, like after I graduated college. That's the only reason I could write. What if it's us?
I feel like I do something similar too. Like I think I said like in like the last Meet You Monday was like every book that I write is based somewhere that I've been before, because like same thing, like I can't just like I feel like if it's like high fantasy, I will sometimes like like obviously like make things up like from scratch, and I'll like have like my little maps and like jotting things down and stuff. But I feel like it is really hard for me to just like craft. And I think part of it too is just like the fact that like my memory sucks. So like if I try to like make a whole like space that I don't know, like the ability to just like remember where things are supposed to be and like how they're like supposed to interact with each other, like I could never like actually come up with anything. Like it would just like completely like flop the second I was like, oh yeah, like it's 10 minutes away, it's 20 minutes away, I don't know how long away it is because I've never actually been there. So I feel like, yeah, like I tend to like always base things like somewhere that I'm really familiar with. And then I also always have like Google Maps open, like jotting things out. Like I did, like I was writing like one book and I had drawn like a diagram of like this many miles from here to here to there. To, like,
I've done, you should see my notes. I bet our notes look like identical. It's so, but I never thought about that as a memory issue. Like, but you're so right. Because when you think about it, like even as you're choreographing a scene, like even if it's like, say it's like a very simple like interior scene or something, like with characters in a living room and stuff, like I don't know how I would remember where the couch is or whatever unless I am basing it in my head on a real room, whichever room I have decided it is. And it's such a like, like I need to do that so much that I don't even realize I'm doing it, I think. So it's just, yeah, that's so interesting. I do think it is memory. Like, yeah, like I'm not very good with like visual memory like that, so yeah.
Yeah, like I like when I wrote this one story where I had to have like a really atmospheric location. Like it was supposed to have like a really like creepy like apartment complex. And so I literally had to base it entirely off of like where my sister had been living at the time. So like I went through, I had like pictures all over my phone. I had like all these things like jotted down, like remember this, remember that. Cause I was like, literally otherwise I'm like, I'll be like, oh yeah, like they go to the living room. It's like, is the living room like downstairs or upstairs? Like how many couches are there? I have no idea. Like, are there windows? I forgot. Like, and I feel like that happens to me with a lot of things too. Like, especially like I feel like, I'm not good at like abstract thought, like the like idea of like, oh yeah, like I'll just like when I'm reading a book, if someone's describing a location, I usually like compare it to the closest thing I know of and like picture that. So like it'll be like, oh, like they're describing like someone's living room, and I'm like, you know, it kind of reminds me of like my grandmother's living room. I'm just gonna picture my grandmother's living room. Like, I'm not actually picturing what you're describing, because I feel like when I try to like place things like abstractly in my head, they just don't stay there. They're just like everything's just like
this is so wild. Like this is like, yeah, I relate to this like I don't, it's like I've never like interrogated it though, you know. It's
yeah.
just been like, yeah, that's reading, you know. Like
I feel like it only occurred to me when I was talking to a friend who was like they were basically saying like they can't read a book unless everything is like heavily described so they can picture like everything. And I was like, if you heavily describe everything, like I literally, it makes it harder for me to picture things, because now I know that what you're describing is contradicting whatever image was like, you know, brought up in my head. So now I'm like, okay, well, I don't even know how to picture where these people are. Now they're literally just like floating in space because it's the only thing I can imagine. So I feel like that was like when I first started being like, okay. So like the way that I picture things as I'm reading is totally different than the way that like, you know, these other people are picturing things as they're reading, and like why. And then I was just like, you know, I feel like it's even like for instance, like I'll like remembering, like this is why I took pictures of like my sister's apartment, because like remembering it, like I can remember the vibes I got, I can remember like certain smells, I can remember like sounds I heard, but I feel like to remember what it actually looks like where everything is located, like that kind of stuff, it's like warbly, and like I can't like actually pin it down. So I feel like it's like, yeah, just like visual memory for me is very weak, and it's like Pinterest boards and like photos of everything, and like hoping, like Google Maps open, just like the hopes I can actually keep things located in the right place.
oh yeah, oh my gosh, it's so funny. Like yeah, and the need to do that, even like, and you know, like on the writing side of it, like, you know, I mean, like certainly I'm doing that constantly if it's any kind of like real place that like other people could go to, but like even if it's just like a house and stuff, like the level of obsessiveness that I like achieve trying to make sure that like, you know, I'm like, wait a minute though, does like, you know, this character's bedroom exactly match my childhood bedroom? Let me go see if I can find the like real estate listing for my childhood. I'm like, who cares? Like, definitely, but
I feel like even I'm just saying, like even like Meet Cute Diary. So you know, like Noah is like sleeping in like Brian's closet, and that's like his bedroom. That's literally because in my last apartment, my closet was massive, and it was like I used it as like an office space. So I was literally like measuring out, can I fit a full bed in here? Okay, yeah. So then Noah can have a full size bed, and like, and just like, and like who cares? Like no one has like no one's gonna know how big my closet is. Like I could have put a fucking king size bed in there. Like no one can tell me I'm wrong. But like, but here I am, like, oh wait, like can I actually fit this? If I feel like how many things can I fit in this closet that's not actually real? And like
this makes perfect sense to me. It's absurd. It's like, I know, it's like, oh my Lord, yeah. And it's just like, and sometimes I think about like the lengths I will go to. Like so for a scene in the What If It's Us sequel, I decided for whatever reason that I needed to set it in like the flagship Bloomingdale's in, you know, like in New York. Like I wanted to be that one. It had to be Bloomingdale's, like in the men's department. So first, you know, the YouTube rabbit hole, and I'm like, you know, it's just like my kid, you know, mommy, what are you watching? Like, mommy's working, you know, and I'm like, somebody like walked through Bloomingdale's, and I'm like, men's department, you know, and like, when I wasn't like satisfied by whatever visual references I was able to like pull up from YouTube, I called that store. I called that Bloomingdale's. And I was like, and I didn't want to like trick anybody because they offer like virtual appointments where they'll take you around the store. And I was like, but I didn't want to like pretend that I was like looking for clothing that I wasn't looking for and trick somebody into like spending their time doing that. So I called and was like totally upfront about my purpose, and like the consultant that I spoke to is the biggest sweetheart on earth. He took me with his own, like with the connection study, he took me around with his own cell phone and like walked around the store with me. So I wrote him into the book. So he gets a cameo.
I'm so excited to meet this random person who works in Bloomingdale.
Oh, he's incredible. He's like, yeah, he's the hero of the book. So.
Like this is the like spin-off that no one was expecting, is like the Bloomingdale's employee.
Oh, like yeah, I would love that fan fiction too. If anybody wants to, yeah, but I only accept happy endings for him. He's like, he deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah.
The entire world. Yeah. So
it has to be where he has like a mirror meet cute to like what like Arthur and Ben had, but like in like Bloomingdale.
Yes, he does. That's so sweet. Yes.
Like amazing. I'm here for it. Like I love the wildest places that like inspiration for books can come from.
Me too. Yeah. It's funny what ends up going into the book.
I was just thinking, back to what we were talking about too, like just about like how like we were like, oh yeah, like our brains like vibe so much. I was just thinking about how like whenever I pick up your books, they're always like really fast and easy reads for me. And I feel like part of it is just like, I feel like the amount that you like describe things is just perfect for me. Like it's exactly what I need, because you're giving me like something like for instance, like I was thinking of like Kate's mom's kitchen. Like when I was reading that scene, I had like a clear, vivid image, and I was like, "Why do I have such a clear, vivid image?" Because I was picturing my mom's kitchen, and I don't know why. Like something like the way you like describe it, I was like, "Oh, that's perfect!" Like just perfectly like autofilled my own mom's kitchen into like the scene. So I'm like, I actually love that, because I know like for some people like it's really helpful to have like a whole lot of description, but like for me, like I feel like the way that you describe it, where it's just kind of like touch and go, like just enough. Like I feel like for me, that's like just like perfect, and I'm like, it makes reading so like easy, which is not usually a thing for me. Reading is usually like hard because I just don't have the attention span to like sit and like read.
That's such a big compliment. Like, thank you so much. I mean, I felt the way I like flew through Meet Cute Diary, of course. Like, I just like, and I find that really comforting too, because I think sometimes we just, as a book community and stuff, and just as a reading community, and I count myself as a reader among readers, like we get really hung up on like what are the characteristics of like good writing, as if it is like an objective thing, when it is so subjective. Like something that I might not connect with because I think it's and I skew kind of in the same direction you do, not surprisingly, but like something is like a little bit like the prose is like more dense, that might make it like, and I might still like, I might be able to like fall into it for sure, but like if I have trouble connecting with it, it's going to be like so perfect for a certain kind of reader, and that reader may turn around and read a book like mine and just be like, what is this? Like,
yeah, like I feel like that happens a lot with me. Like I'll be like, like I'll be like, this book is the best book ever. And you'll hear so many people be like, this book is horrible. Like the characters were flat. Like this, and I'm like, I thought the characters were so relatable. Like I thought like, like the world building was so good. Like, and I feel like, yeah, like I do feel like that happens a lot. And I think especially because of like the way publishing is structured, where there's like this emphasis on like trying to find that big title. So it's like constantly trying to replicate whatever the last big title did. And so I do feel like I feel like a lot of times people kind of get caught up in like, oh, these are the big titles. These are things that everyone's talking about. These are the things that are like super popular. And so you kind of like, I feel like sometimes people do have like this idea like this is good, this is bad. And it's like, you know, I think ultimately I feel like the best way that like publishing thrives is when like you kind of cater to everyone. You know what I mean? Like, because I can pick up a book and think, God, like this book is so hard for me to get through, but I can still acknowledge that like somebody who likes all these things that for me are like off-putting is gonna love this book. It's gonna be like the best book they've ever read. You know, and so I feel like that, and I do feel like that's something that we kind of like take for granted, is like, you know, we kind of get used to what is good, and like, you know,
and it's, I mean, yeah, and it's so like, yeah, it varies per person. It changes over time. It is like very culturally biased. It is like, yeah, there are all kinds of like specific like lenses that affect like what we perceive as good, you know, we being like each individual one of us. Yeah, which is why like I always like really appreciate a review. I mean, I'm not always in the mood to get this, like, don't tag me in this, you know, one of my books, but like I really, really appreciate like reviewers who can be like, yeah, no, like this wasn't for me, and here's why, you know, rather than this is a piece of shit, you know, like,
yeah,
like there is so much value because like you really can see the way, like, and I as a reader I've done this, you know, where I've like seen a review that somebody's been like, this isn't for me, and here's why, and I am like, already I've got Little Shop of Stories already like pulled up, you know, like I'm like, you know, so yeah, it's and it's kind of fun like that we all have such different approaches to reading and different tastes.
yeah. It's always, I feel like it's always funny when you see like a review being like, either like, these are all the reasons I hated this book, and you're like, those are like all the reasons I love this book, or like the opposite, and you're like, you know, you know, like, and it's like, and I do think, I think sometimes the reason people get like so like tense about it is because sometimes people will get really defensive, like, oh, like I didn't like this book for this reason, and it's like, well, then you're wrong, and it's like, you're not wrong. Like if you hate, like if you read Meet Cute Diary and you think Noah is annoying as hell and you hate him, like you're not wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
in that case, you're wrong because Noah. But in any other case, you're not wrong.
You know, it's like, yeah, like ultimately, like at the end of the day, like, you know, I mean, unless you, like, if you're saying like, oh, Noah is like an inauthentic portrayal of a trans person, okay, then you're wrong. Cause like, no, this is not true. But like,
well, you know what? Like that is like such a common, like it's so funny that we can like just sort of like I of course I agree with you, but like that's a really common line of criticism. Not about like I've not like seen that particularly about Noah, but just in general, like I'm still mad about somebody who years ago called out, you know, like history is all you left me for like inauthentic OCD rep or something. It was like the review was like, I don't have OCD, nor have I ever met somebody. I'm like,
clearly,
I still mad. I'm still mad. I talk about it like all the time too. I'm like, I've never been so angry about a review. It was years ago. Not even you know.
When I was still a book reviewer, I actually got into fights with people because there were people who were saying that the representation in More Happy Than Not was like inauthentic, and I was like, you said it's what now? Like, you're gonna sit here and say this is inauthentic? Like, and it's just, and I just feel like, yeah, like when you're calling out one like, first of all, like inauthentic, like especially like as a word, like that's not saying like, oh, I didn't vibe with this, or like it felt a little cliche for me. Like when you say inauthentic, what you're saying is this person's identity is not like accurate, like it's not their right to like have this identity, and that's like always kind of messed up. Like just like even if you don't know this person's identity, like to just say this person's identity is wrong, like at that point you're not even calling out the book, you're calling out the author, and that's like really like, you know,
I know about that.
you know,
that happened once or twice.
You know, it's just like, what are you doing? But then like, yeah. But then it's like very like I feel like even when like I've read books like with representation that was like of my identity and thought, God, I hate this character. God, I do not dig this book. Like, and that's fine. Like, there's no obligation to like a book just because it has your identity. But like to claim that like, you know, the character is inauthentic, that like it's not like actually true to the author's experience because it's different than yours, is just like so like it's just don't do that. Just don't do it. Like,
I agree. And like, you know, and like I don't like, I find that I feel like everybody kind of has to like go through their phase of reading Goodreads till they get burned. And like, I hit that wall like a while ago. So like, you know, you throw your thing up on Goodreads, I'm not going to see it, like live your truth or whatever. But like, you know, there is something about that discourse though that just like kind of pervades the way people talk about certain books, and it baffles me. And a lot of times, I mean, and I'm more likely to see it about other people's books just because I'm such a hot mess and I am like so like yeah, unless I'm like spiraling, in which case I like will find it, but like, you know, but not on Goodreads. Like, but yeah, but it's just like, yeah, I do think we need to be a little bit more careful about like telling people that they are doing their own identity wrong, you know?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
And like, and I think at the end of the day too, like when it comes down to like, I know you're not on Twitter anymore, like congrats, because it's honestly the best. But there's been some discussions on Twitter recently about a couple of white authors who've stepped way out of their lane and like writing like racial representation. And I think it's just like when you think about the way that like the majority, like the privileged authors will always feel entitled to like write whatever they want, the way that it's like the way that like people police marginalized authors writing their own identities is kind of like believe me, like we have enough self-doubt, like we already are constantly told that we're not enough, like we had to like push through all of that to even like put this book together. Like the last thing we need is somebody else saying, well, because your experience is different than mine, it's not the real experience. It's like, please.
Yeah, well, and then it's also like, you know, the thing that's complicated, and like, you know, the reason, one of many reasons why I will never, like, even if I get tagged in something kind of in that vein, which I often do, you know, like I'm not going to, I personally, given my specific like platform, I'm not going to put somebody on blast, because like even if it's somebody who, like, if you were to like stack up kind of different like identity labels, like even if it's somebody who's like technically like more privileged than I am, like privilege can be really complicated. Like I just, you know, like you like I mean, like I always like I sometimes like think with me, I'm like, what if I put in my bio like, oh yeah, like queer, fat, Jewish, neuroatypical author with ADHD and anxiety. Like, but like, I know that's not like the truth of my like industry power. You know, those are true, like they're true labels, but they're not like, they don't tell the whole story with me. So like, I just like, I know I have to be careful, but like, I understand where readers are coming from with the way that we come down. We, again, because like I am a reader, I do this, it's like a natural instinct. Like we come down harder on books that like we really hope are going to represent us. You know, and a lot of times, you know, those are books by either by people who we know to be own voices, or, you know, just, sometimes it's like books by like smaller creators and things like that. Like we come down harder because like, I mean, sometimes it's just like the same reason that like I, you know, like I have been way meaner in my life to my little sister than to just about like any other woman on earth, you know? Like, so, but yes, I don't know. It's just like, it really does. Like, I definitely feel where that's coming from. And it feels like a very like sincere kind of urge, you know, and I get it and I respect it. It makes things complicated sometimes. It really does, like from a creative standpoint, and I don't know the solution, but yeah. So,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely think like I do think it always feels. I feel like it always feels worse like when someone does something like that, you know, is like harmful, and they're like one of you, because you're like, I trusted you, like I rooted for you, like I was like I really was putting all this like faith into you. So I definitely get that part too. I think ultimately it just kind of comes down to like remembering that like people are people. Like so number one, like don't put people on a pedestal. Like remember like we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we all like, you know, are gonna have different opinions and do things that like you may not like always appreciate or agree with. And I also think it's just a matter of like remembering like when you approach something, like people are people. Like if you feel like, oh, like this book, you know, did something harmful, like there's nothing wrong with talking about like the harm in the book. But like it's also like a matter of like, are you talking about like, oh, I felt like this rep was cliche, or are you like arguing that this author does not deserve to write this representation? You know what I mean? Like kind of like what are you questioning? Are you questioning the writing, or are you questioning the person? And like, you know, why are you questioning the person? If you are like, are you questioning their author's deeds, or are you questioning like their identity? Like, you know, I feel like those are like, I feel like people kind of like blur those lines, and I feel like that's where kind of like it just gets so like complicated and messy. But ultimately, yeah, I feel like that's kind of just like it's kind of like remember like what are you critiquing, you know, and like, you know, ultimately, like, why do you feel the need to critique someone's identity? You know what I mean? Like to critique their actions, critique their words, like that's like, you know, but why do you feel the need to critique who they are? Like,
I agree. And you know, the only thing I would add to that too is something that I think like I feel like Emery, you've been like amazing about like beating this drum too. It's just the reminder that like all of this is to say like you should never ever feel pressured to like if you are worried that like you know you think like you know you think this book might be harmful, and like I don't care what you think that. Like, I don't care if you did like a detailed read through of a bunch of reviews and you have decided that it would be harmful, or I don't care if you're just like, yeah, I don't know, Becky Albertalli. Like, I just like, I don't think so. Like, respect, you know, like you absolutely don't have to read any author's books like if you feel even a little bit uncomfortable, and also like when you start to think about like own voices and stuff, like I believe like with all my heart it is like not intrusive, or like I don't think there's anything wrong with being like I'm really excited about these own voices books, like and if you leave some people off of the list who are in fact own voices, like it's still a list, it's not going to include anybody, it's not going to include everybody anyway. You can boost the books that you feel like confident about or that you know are own voices or something like that. Like I think like I do think some of the things that we see as like completely like irreconcilable about like the own voices conversation versus like the privacy conversation, I think some of those things aren't really problems, you know, right? Like
yeah, and I feel like the thing is too is like remember like own voices was intentioned for like readers, like it's the goal ultimately like is just for readers to kind of like decide what's good for them. You know what I mean? Like if I pick up like, you know, a book that has like a gay character, I don't necessarily need to know if the author is gay. Like I don't feel like it's relevant to me. Like, but like for me, like if I pick up a book with like a character with ADHD, I'm gonna be a little more wary just because I don't see good representation for ADHD. So like for me, like if I don't know if the author has ADHD, I might be a little, you know, apprehensive. I may not pick up the book, you know, but like, again, that's my personal decision based on how I feel, like where I feel comfortable, like meeting, you know, these stories. But like, again, like somebody else will feel perfectly comfortable with it and they'll pick it up. Like ultimately it's just like, you know, the point of own voices is not to say who can or cannot write or publish a book, you know. It's more so about like, you know, letting people know, you know, people who are open to sharing that information, like letting them share it so that their readers can decide if that's something that, you know, matters to them. And if that's important to them, then they can make that decision. And if it's not, then it doesn't matter, you know. And I think that's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of like one of the biggest things I think with the own voices conversation is I think a lot of people tend to speak in like these like absolutes, like, you know, we must make things own voices, or we must never like use own voices because it outs people. And it's like, it's not, you know, I feel like ultimately the issue is when you try to force this label on people, or where you try to say like, you know, as a whole, X cannot happen, Y cannot happen, you know. And it's kind of like, the whole point is just to let people have the ability to choose and like the knowledge to choose. Like people have the right to choose what they are reading based on what's comfortable for them. I think that's kind of just
brilliantly, perfectly. Like I agree with all of that so much. Yeah. Like I think like we're closer to like getting there than we realize. Like it's not like like it's almost like we just have to like tweak a little bit about the way we use it. Like I personally feel like I see so much value in the idea of it, and it's like I know some people kind of like, I know there's some conversation too about like, do we need a different like term for it or whatever. Like I'm open to whatever, but I think like just the idea of kind of I guess being mindful about kind of what we read, and like also you know boosting voices that like publishing has not been great about elevating. Like those things are really important, and those things can happen without putting anybody's like privacy at risk or shutting anybody out of the industry because of how we like perceive their identity.
Yeah, I mean, my rule of thumb with publishing is like we need to be making more room always. Like I'm done with like gatekeepers telling us who can or cannot do whatever. Like just give us a chance. Like just give us a chance. Like, I think that's like that's just like okay. Let's move on to the next question because we are tight on time now. But so obviously you do some really amazing co-written work. So I want to ask if there are any authors that you would love to co-write a book with that you have not co-written with already.
Yes, although like I'm so like over contracted that it's like I want to like with a disclaimer that like definitely don't expect this like book announcement or this is like not something that's in the like realistic stages or anything like that. It's just a dream. But Jasmine Borg and I have had an idea that we've been like batting around for a long time, so that's like definitely something that I would love to do one day. And also Jen, I was like thinking about that. I was like, Jen Dugan and I have a project that we've like that started out as a joke, but turned into something we got kind of excited about. Jen is also very like heavily contracted and stuff too, as is Jasmine. Like that's part of the always like logistics and timing and stuff. But yeah, what about you? I'm like dying to know.
So I actually do have a co-written project that I'm working on, tentatively working on. With a friend. I don't even know if I feel like we've been like joking, teasing it like publicly, but I don't even know if like people even realize what's going on. But it's Sonora Reyes, the author of Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, which comes out in 2022. So we're working on something. Whether when that thing will be seen is yeah. And then Johnny Garzavia and I have been joking, talking about doing an enemies to bigger enemies story. That is a joke, but now that we have the same agent and our agent is like here for it, we'll see.
It always starts as a joke, but like I
feel like this is the best thing. You're like, okay, this is like absolutely absurd. This is never gonna happen. I actually, oh my god, I'm gonna tell you about something after we're not live anymore because I shouldn't share this live. But I have something to tell you about a joke that turned into a thing, and it's really funny. I'm like, oh wait, I forgot. Right? I probably shouldn't say this publicly. Let me be quiet. Okay. Okay, so YA romance and diverse romance especially have grown a lot since you first sold Simon Versus back in 2013.
Yeah, I guess it sold in like December of 2013.
Okay, cool. So what are some things that you feel like the genre is really nailing right now, and what are some things that you would like to see more of in the future?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like even the things that I feel like are like progressing in really exciting ways, I would still like to see more of, like in general. Like one of the things that like just a shift that I particularly noticed that's really exciting are there are starting to be, especially very recently, a lot more books by trans authors, own voices trans books, and also just like books by trans authors in general. Like, and also just like other identities too that are not cis, like genderqueer. There, I have noticed like there is definitely I feel like feels starting to feel like a little bit of a golden age for like rom-coms and stuff about queer women or queer girls. I guess I'm thinking YA. And I do think queer boys in general is like continued to grow, and a lot of the stuff that's selling and publishing the last couple of years is by authors who are openly owned voices. I find that all really exciting. I think we are still like when you start to get into like the intersections with race, disability, and just anytime you take a step back from it and kind of look at within those kind of categories, like who's being represented. Like I still think there is a lot of room for improvement, but there are also like I don't know, I mean, there are authors of color who like more and more authors are selling their books every day. So it's like I definitely don't want to let this moment pass without acknowledging that, because that's such a huge deal. I think more of that would be great. I've thought about this. This is like something I definitely don't want to like go into in detail, but I would like the community to have its reckoning about anti-Semitism personally. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember when I first read Simon Versus, that was actually one of the first like queer books that I even like read. And like it's wild the difference, because now almost everything I pick up is queer. Like, I mean, literally, I basically everything I pick up, it's either queer or like, people of color, preferably both, but like, like at least one. So like I feel like, yeah, like the difference just like in like 5-6 years, like there's just a difference in like the ability to find those stories. And something else I would really love to see more of too is neurodiverse stories. Like especially like I would love to see like neurodiverse romance where like both characters are neurodiverse. And especially like intersectionally so, because I feel like you do like you'll have like romances where it's like, oh, like one character has anxiety, or like one character has like PTSD or something. You're like, okay, cool, like like don't be wrong, like I mean more of that obviously too, but I would love to see like that, just like I feel like that way that you vibe when you meet somebody whose brain is like yours, like you know what I mean. Like I feel like that's just like it's so cute, and I feel like we don't see enough of that. So I would love to see more of that.
Now I'm thinking of like the ADHD romance that would go off. It would literally read like this event. It would just
it'd be like a back and forth like a while. Like, look, I would love to do like I was talking with an autistic friend, and I was like, can we do like an ADHD autism like romance, or like or like honestly I'd do an ADHD romance too. Like I just feel like it's like like that feeling like where people like you just like vibe with people. Like I love that. Like it's so cute. Somebody says, I would love to see either of you co-writing with Casey McKeeston. I will, Casey, if you're reading this, you can hit me up and we can co-write something, because I feel like we both also have like that chaoticness, and I'm here for it.
I would be so starstruck. I love Casey. I'm a big fan. I feel like it's like so obvious to everybody too.
And they're both just like awkwardly here, like, Casey, if you're reading this, if you're reading this, please hit me up. I'll give you my phone number. Okay. Okay, so one last question really quick. If it were possible for characters to hop across books the way that characters hop across games in Wreck-It Ralph, what outside characters would Kate have in her squad, and who would be her rival / enemy?
I prepared for this question, so I'm just going to go through it really quick. I've like really tried for this, like, yeah. So, okay, obviously Noah from Meet Cute Diary. I put in Bree from On the Come Up, Carrie from Can't Take That Away,
Oh my God.
Phoebe from There's Something About Sweetie, Henry from Charming as a Verb, Lou from Hot Dog Girl, and Remy Cameron from How to Be Remy Cameron. That is the squad. I just like, you can add people. Like, I'm welcome to take suggestions in the comments for additions to the squad. Yeah, nobody gets like pulled out of that squad. That's like,
that's a power squad. I love it. I'm like,
the like amount of extraness and chaos, sheer chaos, like in this squad.
But like anyone trying to like mess with that squad is gonna have like their whole life ruined. Like,
well,
it's like,
I mean, to mess with the squad. So the rival / frenemy, I've come to the conclusion that that would be Dylan from What If It's Us.
Oh my God!
I'm not wrong.
Oh my God! I'm like, okay. You know what? Honestly, you're right though, because I can see it. I'm here for that.
I know, and I'm not going to say like, you know, it could end in like an enemies to lovers kind of thing with just you know, like I'm open to that. I'm not saying that like, you know, Dylan. I mean, y'all know I love Dylan. Like, Dylan's not a Mark Addison. Like, Dylan's not like, he's not a real enemy. He's just like, you know, he's a fun rival. I think he could keep things interesting, right?
Yeah, no, I can see, and I feel like, okay, so now I feel like Dylan needs a squad so that they can have like a baking competition, like the squads, like.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like, I think that would be like the ultimate like battle. Like, I'm here.
Oh, this is the crossover of my dreams. Like,
so. Okay, well, we're out of time. I actually went over a little bit, but it's fine. So, would you like to tell people where they can find you online and give one last pitch of Kate in Waiting?
I don't know if y'all can still see me. Emery's frozen for me. Are you? Oh, you're back. Yeah. But yeah, you can find me online. The best place to find me online is Instagram at Becky Albertalli. I run my own Instagram, but I have a Twitter that my assistant runs, also at Becky Albertalli. I feel like everything's at Becky Albertalli. I have like
You're so lucky.
Well, I grew up with like a very common name, so it's all very new to me. I used to be Becky Goldstein, which is like, there's like, you know, you like walk into any synagogue and like, you know, yeah, like, so, yeah, I hope to see y'all on Instagram. And this is a total blast. I could do this all day. So,
yes, I'm Emery Lee, author of Meet Cute Diary, a YA trans rom-com about a trans boy who stages a fake relationship with a fan of his blog in order to save the blog from internet troll. You can find me on Twitter at Emery Lee Who. You can find me on Instagram at Emery Lee Books, and you can find me on my website, emeryleebooks.com. I included the links in the description below. You can also find the giveaway that I mentioned earlier. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. The giveaway is US only. Sorry, I apologize. But because I'm shipping them from my apartment, it's going to cost me a lot. So yeah, but be sure to check out the giveaway. And be sure to come back next week. I will be talking with another lovely author who I love so much. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here, Becky. And yeah, check out our links. Bye, everybody.